You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Sean Wilkie, and along with my awesome co host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Price Fallin. Price is the co founder and chief innovation officer at Otto, formerly TeleVet. He learned to code and develop one of the first telemedicine platforms in the veterinary industry. Over the years, the company evolved, as did Price's role, and is now a comprehensive solution to help modernize veterinary practice processes to run drastically more efficiently. Today, Price spends most of his time identifying expansion opportunities and partnerships to quickly validate and launch them as Otto continues to expand its offering to meet veterinary clinics' needs. Price, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time.
Yeah, thank you all for having me.
Very stupid first question, but I have to say it. Price Fallen. Did you ever use your name as the promotion where the price is falling?
No, but I do. I saw something a long time ago that said you should go out and immediately buy your name as the domain so that someone else
Yes.
doesn't buy it and turn it into nonsense. And that's exactly what it is. So I actually do own pricefallon.com.
So, okay, I apologize, but it was just, I could not say that.
Yeah.
So, amazing journey. It looks like you guys are crushing it. Tell everybody, please, what Auto is and how it transformed itself from TeleVet.
Yeah. So auto is quite a lot of things nowadays, but I think it's important to know where we've been, to know kind of where we're going and what we do now is our history. So we started off as one of the very first telemedicine providers in the industry. We actually had our first like public appearance at the NAVC conference back in 2017. And when we originally started out, it was very much so just like we're pet owners. We can relate to this like inconvenience of having a sick dog and having to go to the vet and that sort of stuff. So it was very much more of like a selfish mission. Like, hey, there's got to be a better way. One of the instances was my co-founder. We live in Austin. He had to drive not like but 2 miles to get to the vet, but through Austin traffic, it took him 45 minutes. And then we kind of played around with this idea of telemedicine for a bit and decided to launch it. There's a little bit of an equine history before that too, but we kind of transferred over to telemedicine and decided to launch that first. And so from there, we got to know the industry very, very well. We built amazing relationships with the vet clinics along the way. And eventually we found out there's much bigger pain points than convenience for pet parents, specifically in the vet industry. We learned about the compassion fatigue and the suicide rates and all those other problems that the vet clinics go through. And that's where we really wanted to shift our focus to that because there was such a more dire need there. So we transformed from telemedicine along the way into something that could actually help meet those pain points. And that's where Otto kind of got evolved and launched in the end of 2020. And it started off as a workflow communications platform built around automations. That's kind of our core bread and butter. But we do a lot of different things that other point solutions do. So typical stuff like service reminders and texting and all that sort of stuff, loyalty points and whatnot. But we've expanded quite a bit past that with a focus around automations and super deep integration into the practice management systems that clinics use. And so that's a lot of times why the clinics come to our platform and want to start using it. And then, outside of that, we've expanded quite a bit into other areas like payments, memberships, all sorts of different parts of the platform that, clinics come to us for and utilize different aspects of it.
If you had to put your finger on the one thing that kind of got you guys on the growth trajectory to prove out the concept, what's I guess, the one feature that provides the most value that you've seen the most uptake with out there in the veterinary clinics?
I think the idea of being able to automate the workflows that are mundane, that no one likes to do, a lot of the vets that we've talked to, they all want to just provide the pet care, right? They don't really want to have to deal with a lot of the back office needs. And so a lot of those tasks that they just don't appreciate, we try to automate. I think one of the biggest challenges that we face, automations, it seems like, oh, it's so simple, just, do whatever the thing is that allows them to automate that process. But one of the more difficult things that we found is that to actually have automations work, they need to be personalized, they need to be timely and easy to complete. And so to do all that, you had to absorb a lot of the task and you had to be flexible enough for the clinics. You had to be customizable while still being simple. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges we faced along the way, but it's definitely comes as one of the most valuable things that, when clinics do a demo with us compared to whatever current solution they have, they see that this can go a lot further.
Can you help us paint the picture for the listeners because they're not seeing it in front of them? And also, please mention the website. But what does that look like? Workflow automation, task automation. Just walk us through it. What does this look in when it's implemented? What are those tools?
Yeah, so our website is Otto.vet, and there's definitely a lot more details. And we actually just launched a rebrand of it. So I'd love to get feedback if y'all have any to definitely check it out. But essentially, the way we like to talk about what are these automations actually doing is you can imagine there's kind of a before, a during, and an after appointment, right? And so in a typical process, most clinics will have reminders that go out and they say, "Are you going to be at your appointment today? Please confirm." That is kind of, table stakes at this point, right? We went well beyond that with deeper integrations to be able to do that for different doctors, for different pets, for different all sorts of different criteria from the data points we have. And so, for example, we can say, hey, this pet in particular has a surgery appointment coming up very soon. And so, typically for surgery appointments, of course, we want to confirm it. And then we also need to have them fill out an anesthesia consent form. We need to have them pay a $500 deposit. We need to provide them feed and water instructions of what to do the night before the appointment. Those are all things that our platform can do where it's just a sequential steps essentially. And they can also branch out too. So if someone says, oh, I can't make it anymore, there's a whole different path for that. And so you can imagine typically those steps are done. The confirmation might be done by a system, but then they show up to the clinic, they're having to be handed a clipboard, with a form, and they fill it out, and then they with their credit card and swipe the card at the terminal and make the deposit. And there's a lot of steps there for the intake. A lot of our clinics that use our platform have automated that within our workflow system so that when they show up, they're literally just dropping their pet off and saying, here you go. And then they're going straight back into the, exam room, surgery room, whatever it may be for their appointment. So that's a great example of what we like to say to automate it. There's stuff that we can send out during the appointment too. That's more rare, but afterwards, there's follow-up instructions, compliance, surveys as far as, NPS scores, CSAT scores, and all that sort of stuff too to help drive, for example, reviews on Google and stuff like that, or make sure that they are getting the refills for their medication, or making sure that there's no issues that happen with the surgery and so on. So it just provides a lot of the platform to make sure that the process that the clinic has defined gets done automatically for them as best as can, and then we help raise certain issues to them that need their attention.
Amazing, very interesting, and can definitely see the utility there to kind of help automate a lot of that mundane stuff that oftentimes is just missed. And then it costs money because it's missed or things don't happen the way that they're supposed to. So the use case makes a ton of sense. You guys have gone on quite the journey. You said 2017, or sorry, 2017 was the start. So you guys have been in the market for 7 years. You're one of the first not one of the first, but you're one of the early kind of startups that have gone through secured a Series B series of funding. So that's a big milestone. So congrats on that. One of the things I want to ask you is, what does a company look like today compared to what it looked like before at Series A or, kind of in the early years? And what's it been like to be a founder on that journey?
I don't think I could have ever have pictured, when we started this, that it would be this size. We have about 90 or so employees, thousands of clinics use our platform, and versus you look back at 2017 when we launched at NAVC, we had 5 clinics on the platform. It was just me and my co-founder, Stephen Carter. I literally jumped ship completely and went all in on a commitment in 20, I think it was 2014. Yeah, and I quit my job, said I'm going to go all in on this and whatever it takes, and burned through a ton of savings for that. So lots of lessons learned there, but it's quite interesting how quickly things can go because it definitely ebbs and flows. And when we were first launching the telemedicine platform, very slow growth. We were signing up best, a handful of clinics a month essentially. And then we closed our seed series in December of 2019, hired our first employee then, and then right before COVID in March, we actually had 6 employees, including myself and my co-founder. COVID hit, and we went from 79 clinics using our platform to 900 within a matter of 3 weeks. We were like I said, the premier telemedicine platform at the time. So crazy growth. And everyone always talks about, is your startup a vitamin or is it an aspirin? How bad do people need it? I like to say that we were a defibrillator for the industry. We were trying to be there to keep clinics alive and running as best we could with our telemedicine solution. Now, the good thing about defibrillator is the need for it is greater than anything else there is, right? Greater than aspirin or vitamin. The bad thing is typically you only need it once. And That's about what happened, where we signed up tons of clinics on our platform, and then they started to switch to curbside. And to be completely clear at the beginning too, right before we went into COVID, we actually had this concept for what we call the communications hub back in the day, and it was going to be built around automation. So it's everything that we've always planned all along. It's fortunate and unfortunate that COVID happened. I've made a shift back to telemedicine to support that for a bit. And then we have eventually, probably in July of 2020, shifted back into focusing on our long-term strategy, which we felt was better at hitting our mission of, improving the lives of well-being of vet clinics. And so during COVID, we went from 6 employees in March to I think 25 around the, midsummer of 2020. And then that continued for quite a bit. And then we ended up raising a Series A round, like right 5 months after our seed round, actually, because it was just an internal round. We had to get it done quick. We knew we had to scale to support this. Our numbers were crazy at the time. And then from there, we kept growing a little bit and were able to secure some more funding. Even before the Series B, we kind of had this bridge round of a convertible note. And that really boosted us into having more like around 90 employees or so. And we've kind of been pretty good, steady there. We've been able to create a lot of efficiencies, over the course of those several years that we've been at that point, to where we haven't needed to bring on a whole bunch more staff. And so, but it has been a whirlwind, because they always say when you increase your employee count by 3x, that's when you really struggle. And I can completely confirm that moment of going from 6 to 25 and then from 25 to about 90, those were some of the most difficult times as the company changes. There's a lot of sense of imposter syndrome, especially for myself, maybe my co-founder. I'm not sure. I'm not going to speak for him, but your role changes so fast, and you realize that what used to matter and what you used to do, like I used to code all the time. I could not do that anymore if this was going to scale. I had to start leading teams. I had to think about strategy. I had to think about revenue and all these things that back when you very first start didn't matter nearly as much. It was all about showing usage and throughput. And now it's changes. You have to actually meet your investors' desires with their ROI and that sort of stuff, and keep the lights on and recognize that it's harder and harder to continue to raise funding. So those are probably some of the biggest changes I noticed along the way.
Hey everyone, in our previous episode, we introduced our first sponsor, Zomedica. And today, I'm thrilled to have Scott Ajaz, Senior Project Manager at Zomedica, with us. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, Sean.
Good to have you, man. We've been hearing a lot about the VetGuardian monitor. Can you share what makes VetGuardian a game changer for veterinary care from your perspective?
Sure, thanks for having me, Sean. The Vet Guardian monitor represents a significant advancement because it offers wire-free, zero-touch monitoring of vital signs like temperature, pulse, and respiration. It's ideal for critical situations and provides real-time data, reducing hassle and enhancing comfort for both pets and vets.
That's impressive. How does VetGuardian integrate into a busy practice?
It integrates seamlessly with our cloud application, which enables remote monitoring, live video, and thermal imaging. This allows vets to monitor their patients from anywhere, making care more proactive and efficient.
It sounds like a fantastic addition to any practice. Thanks for that insight, Scott. Talk to you next week. Want to see how VetGuardian works? Schedule a demo with Zomedica today.
So the question that I have about the pivots that you had to go along the way, I don't know if it was a complete pivot from telehealth or how much of the telehealth right now is occupying your mind share, but essentially with a lot of telehealth platforms, and we watched it through this lens of this podcast with Sean, it was like a huge spike. Everybody who was in telemedicine was hooray. And then our dear industry, of course, adopted how to do a curbside instead of embracing the technology. And I think that telemedicine failed. It didn't fail completely, but I think that to the degree where it could have gone with the restriction like the pandemic, it didn't. So with that, how do you decide to pivot? Whether is telehealth your primary focus now, or is it the workflows, and how do you prioritize your mind share between the two?
Yeah, we started to shift our focus at the beginning of 2020, right after we raised our seed round. And like I said, we had this longer term vision of how do we make better impacts on the lives and well being of the vet teams, right? And we knew telemedicine wasn't going to be that thing in its entirety. And so that's when we started to shift focus on workflows, communications, all that sort of stuff. And I think, honestly, before telemedicine, we were focused on the equine space. it's a funny story, but we started a company as Horsefax, and the idea there was that we were going to create Carfax reports for horses. That we talked to everybody. We knew all the connections within the equine industries and all the different groups and clubs and whatnot. And they all loved the idea, but I think what was the struggle was that you had to build out essentially a practice management system to do this, to create records and store them, and then a system to share them. But even more difficult than that is changing the way of how the equine industry has been going for the past, 100 years or whatnot, with how people buy horses, right? So that's how we got to the first pivot, which was to telemedicine. And we said, well, maybe this can be a smaller thing that we can get interest for that can eventually help us lead to a bigger thing, which would be this idea of like a Carfax for horses. We didn't have many ties to Horsefax at the time. It was like a class schoolmate that we knew that had the pain point. So that's how we got started in it. And then eventually we're like, well, we both dog owners, right? And so maybe telemedicine just in general makes more sense for us. And we had a lot of investors that were much more interested. They just didn't know enough about the equine industry. So that was our first pivot. And then the second one came after, realizing that we needed to focus more on the vet industry and shifted our focus away from telemedicine into all the platform and what it does today. And to be honest with you, that's why we changed our name from Otto to TeleVet. I think it was like a couple of years ago, probably, that we did that. And we would pitch people on this workflow communications platform, and it did all these other things: service reminders, loyalty points, everything. And at the end of the demo, they would say, this is all really cool, but I don't need telemedicine. And we're like, we never said telemedicine on this whole call. And yet they associate, it's like the Kleenex for facial tissue, right? It's the branding was too good. And so we had to rename ourselves to Otto. It's a little play on automations and Otto the dog and stuff like that. But yeah, now we don't really talk about telemedicine much at all. There is some aspect of telemedicine that we keep in place where we actually have a platform that allows clinics to have kind of like a remote teletriage team that is an extension of the clinic's practice team. But I think what you originally said about, telemedicine was really cool, and then all of a sudden it kind of like, disappeared for a little bit. Especially, I think what's very difficult is the vet clinics just don't have time to do it. They already don't have time for a lot of things. Adding another thing to them to say, hey, you should do telemedicine too, was one of the more difficult challenges that we had early on when we were focused on the telemedicine platform. Now, I think long term, I think there will be telemedicine in this space. I mean, obviously there is, but I think less and less of that will be the actual individual vets at the clinic who are working day to day on the actual physical care. That'll be less prominent and it'll be more, probably remote services and whatnot that helps out with that. But yeah, today we're strictly focused on everything outside telemedicine.
It's wild. That must have been such an incredible ride to go from, 20, 30 clinics to 1,000 clinics and then to see it all evaporate. Like that must have just killed you guys. Like that must have been horrible.
It hurt a lot because we cared so much about all of our customers, and we literally didn't sleep. My co-founder was sleeping in the office with one of our developers. I remember getting a call from a corporate group executive. We launched a ton of corporate groups on our platform, and we, would work our butts off trying to create scripts to sign them all up at once, right? Which wasn't something that we had built. And I remember getting a call at 4 a.m. after I'd just gone to bed at like 2 a.m. He's like, something's wrong, and we need you to immediately, jump on. And I was just like, so tired. It felt like I was drunk at that point. I was just like so sleep deprived. And I remember my wife she was so supportive at the time. So really appreciate that. And she would like bring me water and coffee and stuff to like help me out. And it was one of the most tough times of my life. I'm sure, our developers, especially, and my co-founder. And it really, yeah, it did hurt a lot because you put in all this effort and you tried to we would do all support tickets all day. And at night we would try to figure out, is there any sort of feature that we can launch that makes this better, that improves it, that removes bugs, or just makes it easier for them to do telemedicine? And we worked on that for probably 6 months and just didn't sleep hardly at all. And then suddenly you get just so many churn requests of clinics who are like, I know I'm not doing telemedicine anymore. And they went to curbside. And I think at that point we're like, okay, yeah, we knew this, like telemedicine isn't the long-term play. Now we got to shift back to, this workflow communications platform, which is a long-term vision, which is we had started on before COVID, right? But yeah, it was tough to kind of like literally all this effort that you put in for several years to build a telemedicine platform and then throw it all out essentially. And none of the vet industry, there were some people that were very passionate about it and thankful for them for sure. But there were some people that were just as quick to get rid of it as quick as they were to sign on to it. But it's a blessing in disguise. We wouldn't have gotten funding and all this other sort of stuff had it not been for that.
I think it's incredible. It's such an incredible journey, and thanks for sharing it with us. I wish I could ask you like 6 other questions because I've got them teed up, and I think Ivan's got 3 or 4 as well. But we're out of time. So thanks for stopping in and sharing your journey. We got a couple questions before we wrap up. The first is TED Talk, a YouTube, a book, something that's inspired you and kind of helped you get through the journey that you'd recommend to our audience.
Yeah, so I'll say first, it's not a TED Talk, a podcast, or anything, but I think engineering first principles has been something that I've been really into lately, where she basically tried to, instead of improving stuff, get rid of it. If you ever look at the SpaceX Raptor engines, their generations, that'll tell you everything you need to know, essentially. But yeah, Google that. It's a big philosophy of Elon Musk, I'm a big fan of. But an actual book that I've read many times over and over again, I probably read it once a year, is Scaling Lean by Ash. I think his name's Maria, but it just breaks down such simple things for startups to say, like, what is your goal in life? What do you want to do? Here's what you need to do to hit it. Now go out and run these tests, and if they're not successful, pivot, do something different. And it just puts it in a framework that is so easy to comprehend and so easy to develop. And I've used that over and over again to help prove out a lot of our growth strategies and whatnot along the way. And time again, I just keep coming back to it, especially as the chief innovation officer.
Amazing. Thanks for that.
And the second question that we ask on this podcast, is there another innovator in this industry that you would recommend?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of work with one of our partners, Hill's Pet Nutrition, and Stacy Bone has been instrumental in that. And he's helped us do a lot of really cool work around education, which is kind of the next big horizon for us as a company. And we didn't get into it much on this podcast, but Hills has a lot of really cool stuff that they're working on, and we're helping them lead that effort along the way as well. So I think there's a lot that he can share related to that that will be incredibly insightful. Not necessarily a startup, or people think of it as a technology advanced company or whatnot, maybe, but a lot of what he's done with us is really fascinating, and I think he's got a lot of cool stuff that he can share with you all.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.